50 women, one room, and not a single one of them could make him feel a thing. Caruso stood at the edge of the grand ballroom inside the Plaza Hotel in New York, a crystal glass of whiskey resting between two fingers he hadn't bothered to lift in 20 minutes. The room glittered. Chandeliers spilled gold across marble floors. Diamonds caught the light from every angle. And everywhere he looked, beautiful women moved like water, fluid, deliberate, designed to be noticed. They had been flown in from Los Angeles, from Connecticut, from Washington. Fashion models, heiresses, the daughters of senators and CEOs, all dressed in gowns that cost more than most people's cars. They laughed at the right moments. They touched his arm and tilted their heads at precisely the angle that photographers loved. And every single one of them knew exactly who he was. Caruso Romano, 31 years old. The man who had rebuilt the Romano real estate empire from the ashes his father left behind, and was rumored to control more of New York's private infrastructure than the city council itself. He was 6 feet of quiet power in a black Tom Ford suit, dark Italian features, and eyes the color of cold espresso that had watched too much of the world to still be surprised by any of it. His jaw carried a faint scar from a night he never discussed. His hands were large, still, and always measured. He did not fidget. He did not chase. He did not need to. The women in this room understood that, which is why every single one of them was trying to make him come to her first. It was a game. He had played it before. He knew how it ended. If you're new here, hit that like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss how this ends. He watched a model named Vivian approach from his left, long legs, red dress, rehearsed smile, and felt nothing. Not disinterest exactly. More like the quiet exhaustion of a man who had been surrounded by beautiful things that wanted something from him for so long that beauty itself had stopped registering as anything other than noise. His business partner Marcus appeared at his side and leaned close. "That's the third one you've looked through like she's made of glass," Marcus said. "At what point do we admit this party was a mistake?" "It was always a mistake," Caruso said. "Your idea. I thought 50 of the most gorgeous women in the country might spark something in you. They sparked nothing. Clearly." Marcus sighed and sipped his champagne. The orchestra shifted into something slow and aching, a piece Caruso almost recognized from a time when life felt less like a transaction. He set his glass down on a passing tray without looking. The tray wobbled. He caught it, and that's when he saw her. She wasn't a guest. She wasn't wearing sequins or silk. She wore the standard black and white uniform of the hotel's catering staff, pressed white shirt, black trousers, a small silver tray balanced perfectly in her left hand. As she moved through the crowd with a focus so complete, she looked like the only person in the room actually doing something real. Her dark skin caught the chandelier light differently than the diamonds did. Warmer, quieter, alive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Her natural hair was pinned back at the nape of her neck with a simple clip. No makeup beyond necessity. And her expression was concentrated, professional, tuned entirely inward. Not performing for anyone, not scanning the room for opportunity, just working. Caruso's eyes tracked her the way they tracked anything that moved against the grain of the expected. She weaved between a cluster of senators' wives without breaking stride, delivered 2 glasses of champagne with a small polite nod, and started back toward the service corridor. Someone bumped her elbow. The tray tilted. She steadied it in under a second, barely a flicker of her wrist, and kept moving without missing a beat. And then something happened that Caruso Romano could not explain. She glanced up, not at him. Just a casual sweep of the room to check her path. Their eyes did not meet. She did not see him at all, and something in his chest pulled tight, like a wire drawn too far. "Caruso." Marcus's voice came from far away. "Caruso, who are you looking at?" He didn't answer, because she had already disappeared through the staff door, and he was still standing there. Completely. Absolutely. Still. But that was only the beginning. Her name was Delilah Osei, and she had exactly $93 in her checking account. She knew the number precisely because she had checked it that morning while eating the last of a box of cereal she'd been stretching for 4 days in her studio apartment in Brooklyn, New York, a place so small that her bed, her desk, and her dreams all occupied essentially the same square footage. She was 27 years old, a graduate student in urban policy at Columbia, paying tuition 1 course at a time because that was all she could manage while working 3 jobs. Mornings at a coffee shop in Harlem, evenings at an NGO doing data entry, and weekends doing catering events like this one, where rich people drank $1,000 champagne and tipped, on average, 11%. She was not bitter about it. Bitterness required energy she did not have. What she had instead was a system. Show up. Do the work. Keep moving. Do not make eye contact with men in Tom Ford suits who look at waitstaff the way predators look at prey. She had grown up in California, Sacramento, specifically, the second daughter of a Ghanaian immigrant father who worked nights at a hospital and a mother who taught third grade and made jollof rice on Sundays that could make you believe life was good. Her parents had given her two things: a work ethic that bordered on dangerous and the absolute conviction that she was worth more than the world was currently paying her. She believed them. Most days. Tonight she was on hour 7 of an 8-hour shift, and her left heel had developed a blister the size of a quarter. She was thinking about that blister, and about the policy paper she needed to finish by Thursday, and about whether she had enough subway fare to get home, when someone stepped directly into her path. She stopped, looked up, and the man standing in front of her was looking at her with an expression she had never seen directed at her before. Not desire exactly. Not the appraising look she was used to from men in rooms like this. The kind of look that measured and calculated and found her either useful or dismissible. This was something else. Something quieter and more unsettling. Like he had been waiting for her to reappear and was now trying to figure out why. He was tall, dark, the kind of handsome that looked like it had been assembled by someone who took the job seriously. And he was standing in the middle of the service corridor, which made absolutely no sense. "This area is for staff," Delilah said. Not unkindly. Professionally. "I know," he said. His voice was low, unhurried, with the faint texture of someone who had grown up hearing Italian spoken at a dinner table. "I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure you were all right. You were bumped earlier. Near the bar." Delilah blinked. "I'm fine." You steadied a full tray with one hand. "It's called practice," she said. "Is there something you need, sir? I have to get back." "What's your name?" She studied him for exactly 2 seconds. "Delilah. Delilah," he repeated, like he was filing it away somewhere permanent. I know you're a guest," she said, cutting him off gently. "And I appreciate you checking, but I really do need to get back." And she walked past him. Caruso Romano, the man whose name appeared in the Wall Street Journal twice a month, who had never in his adult life introduced himself to someone who didn't already know who he was, stood in a fluorescent-lit service corridor and watched her walk away. She had not asked his name, had not recognized his face, had not adjusted her posture or softened her voice or tried even slightly to impress him. She had called him sir and walked away, and something about that, the clean, uncalculated indifference of it, hit him in a place nothing had touched in years. Marcus found him 30 seconds later. "Why are you standing in a hallway?" "She doesn't know who I am," Caruso said. "Who?" "The waitress." Marcus stared. Caruso, there are 50 models in that ballroom who know exactly who you are and would like very much to demonstrate that knowledge." "I know. And you're in a hallway." "No." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Then, you need help." Caruso didn't disagree, but he also didn't move. He was already thinking about how to see her again, and he had no idea yet what that decision was going to cost both of them. He found her coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. He had not used Marcus to track her this time. He had simply remembered the name on her staff badge, Columbia Catering, and made one phone call to a department head he'd once donated a building to. 3 hours later, he had her work schedule. He told himself he wasn't going to go. Then he went. The coffee shop was small, warm, and smelled like roasted cardamom and burnt sugar. It sat on a corner in Harlem 3 blocks from a church that played gospel music on Saturday mornings loud enough to be heard from space. Delilah was behind the counter when he walked in, writing something in the margin of a thick textbook with one hand and making an oat milk latte with the other. She looked up, saw him. Her expression did something complicated: surprise, recognition, and something she immediately locked down. "You're the hallway man," she said. "The hallway man," Caruso repeated. "That's new. What can I get you?" "A coffee. And maybe 5 minutes." "I can get you the coffee." She made it without asking his preference. Black, no sugar, because she had read him correctly in under 10 seconds, and slid it across the counter. Their fingers did not touch, but they nearly did, and the nearness of it was louder than contact. He paid. Sat at the corner table she had not offered, but that was clearly the only spot with a sight line to both the door and the counter. The seat of someone who tracked exits. He noticed she noticed that. She came over during a lull, wiping her hands on a cloth, standing at the end of the table rather than sitting. "You looked me up," she said. "Yes." "That's mildly unsettling." "I know. I'm sorry. I couldn't stop thinking about you." "You don't know me." That's the part one couldn't stop thinking about. Delilah looked at him for a long moment. She had been warned about men like this. Not specifically him, but the genus. Wealthy, magnetic, used to getting what they pointed at. She had a policy. She had maintained it without difficulty for 4 years. But there was something in his eyes that didn't fit the category. Not hunger, not entitlement. Something closer to bewilderment, like he was as confused by himself as she was. "Tell me one true thing about yourself," she said. "Right now?" No titles, no money, no resume. He was quiet for just a beat. Then, I run an organization that started as something my father built through methods I'm not proud of. I've spent 7 years trying to make it legitimate. I haven't fully succeeded. There are parts of what I do that exist in spaces that aren't entirely clean. And I've never told anyone that in a first conversation. Delilah sat down. Why tell me? Because you asked for something true and I decided to give it to you. She absorbed this. What kind of not entirely clean? Real estate. Some contracts enforced through pressure rather than law. Old guard relationships I haven't been able to fully cut. Nothing violent. Not anymore. But not innocent either. Not anymore, she echoed. He met her eyes. My father believed that fear was the best currency. I disagree. I've been spending the last 7 years proving him wrong. I'm not done yet. The coffee shop hummed around them. A child knocked over a juice cup 2 tables away. A song by an artist Delilah loved came on through the speaker. She looked at this man, Caruso. He'd finally told her his name, just his first name, and she hadn't pressed, and felt the thing she'd been trying not to feel since the hallway. Recognition. The particular ache of seeing someone clearly and still wanting to move closer. I lost my sister, she said, because fair was fair, and he had offered her a wound, so she offered one back. 3 years ago, she was involved with a man who moved money for people who didn't ask questions. She wasn't involved in anything herself. She just loved the wrong person. And one day his world reached into hers and took her. Caruso went very still. She didn't die, Delilah added quickly. But she lost everything. Her scholarship, her reputation, 2 years of her life to a legal process that nearly destroyed her. She rebuilt. She's okay now. But I watched what that world did to someone I love, and I promised myself I would never. I understand, Caruso said. Then you understand why this conversation is probably the beginning and the end of something. Maybe, he said. Or maybe it's the reason to do better faster. They sat in the coffee shop until her shift ended. They talked about her policy thesis. She was writing about infrastructure inequality in Massachusetts and Washington state. And he told her things about how zoning laws were weaponized in New York that she hadn't encountered in any academic paper. She told him about growing up in Sacramento. He told her about growing up Roman Catholic in a family that treated confession as a business transaction. They laughed twice. Really laughed. And when she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. I'm not promising anything, she said. I know, Caruso said. Neither am I. But his eyes said something his voice was careful not to. 3 weeks. That was all they had. 3 weeks of Tuesday coffees and long walks along the Hudson. Of phone calls that started at 10 and ended somewhere past 2 in the morning when neither of them could think of a reason to hang up. Of Delilah explaining actuarial models to him while he listened with the complete, focused attention of a man who had decided she was the most interesting thing in any room she entered. Of Caruso taking her to a community investment board meeting in the Bronx. Not a date, he said, just something he wanted her to see. And watching her ask questions that made the room go silent and then erupt in applause. Of her slowly, carefully, beginning to believe that the version of him she was seeing was the real one. Then her roommate Adiz called her at 6 in the morning, voice shaking. Delilah was already awake. She'd been awake most of the night finishing a draft, and she answered on the first ring. There were men here, Adiz said. Last night, after you left for the library. 2 men. Expensive suits. They said they had a message. Delilah sat up straight. What message? They knew your schedule. Your class times. Your mother's address in Sacramento. Adiz's voice broke. Delilah, they knew what your mother's morning walk route looks like. They said that people who distract powerful men from their responsibilities sometimes find that being distracted is contagious. The world tilted. Delilah sat on the edge of her bed in her Brooklyn studio and felt every wall she had ever built around herself go simultaneously still and cold. She called Caruso. He answered on the first ring. She told him exactly what had happened, word for word, without crying, because she did not have space inside herself at this moment for anything except clarity. He was completely silent for 6 seconds. Where are you right now? Home. I'm coming. No. Her voice was iron. Caruso. No. I need you to tell me who did this. He was quiet again. Then, my father. She closed her eyes. He's not supposed to have operational involvement anymore, Caruso said, and she could hear the controlled violence underneath his calm. I transitioned management 18 months ago. He was supposed to be removed from Caruso. I'm going to fix this. You can't fix the fact that his people know my mother's walking route. The silence between them was different now, heavier. She could feel him on the other side of it, holding something back. Rage, she thought, the kind that had learned to go quiet rather than loud because quiet was more effective. I told you, Delilah said softly. I told you the first day that I had a line. I know. This is the line. Delilah, if I stay, Your world will keep reaching for the people I love. I've seen this. I know how this goes. And I can't. I can't be the reason someone gets hurt. Not again. Tell me what you need me to do, Caruso said, and the rawness in his voice nearly destroyed her. I need you to let me go, she said. And I need you to make sure whoever sent those men never gets near my family again. I'll handle it. I know you will. A pause. Then, is this goodbye? She pressed her hand over her mouth for 1 second. 1 second of allowing herself to feel the full weight of what she was doing. Then she lowered her hand and kept her voice even. For now, she said, because she was not a woman who made permanent decisions in moments of fear, but she also would not lie to him. She hung up. She sat in the dark of her apartment for a long time. And then she opened her laptop and went back to her thesis because the work was still there, and the work had never let her down, and she needed something solid underneath her hands. 3 blocks away, her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. It was a single line. I'm sorry. I'm handling it. You will never have to be afraid because of me again. She didn't respond, but she didn't delete it either. 6 months. And she counted every one. Not because she was waiting. She told herself she was not waiting. She was finishing her thesis, which she did, in March, at 2:45 in the morning, with Adiz asleep on the couch behind her and tears on her face that she blamed on exhaustion. She was applying for a policy fellowship in Washington, D.C. She was calling her mother in Sacramento every Sunday and listening for anything that sounded like fear in her voice and finding nothing, which meant either the threat had been neutralized or her mother was protecting her. And either way, she was grateful. She was living. She was not waiting. But every time she walked into a room with chandeliers, she felt it. That particular pull behind her sternum, like a tide that had decided her chest was the shore. She Googled him twice. She was not proud of either time. The first time, she found a financial article about the Romano Group's full transition to legitimate real estate holdings. Every gray market contract dissolved. Every old guard relationship formally ended. The announcement accompanied by a $20 million community investment fund for underserved neighborhoods in New York and Connecticut. The second time, she found a photograph. He was at a groundbreaking ceremony for a new community center in the South Bronx, a child of about 8 years old standing next to him with a tiny hard hat on, both of them laughing at something off camera. The child's laughter was obvious even in a still image. And the expression on Caruso's face, unguarded, bright, utterly without performance, was the most human she had ever seen him look. She closed the tab. She sat for a moment. Then she opened it again and looked at the photograph for a long time. For his part, Caruso Romano had done 3 things in the 6 months since she walked away. He had handled his father, not violently, but with the permanent, unarguable finality of a man who had decided that some relationships end at the precise moment they become threats to people who deserve to be safe. His father had retired to Connecticut. It had not been a negotiation. He had dissolved every remaining gray area operation in the Romano Group structure at a cost of $11 million in lost revenue that he absorbed without public comment, because the alternative was continuing to be something he didn't want to be. And he had not contacted Delilah. Not once. He had wanted to. Every week he had wanted to. Marcus had told him at least 4 times that he should reach out. She didn't say never. She said for now. Those are different words. Caruso, I studied English. And every time, Caruso had said no, because she had asked for space and control was the only love language he currently had the right to offer her. But he thought about her constantly. The way she had called him the hallway man with zero apology. The way she had made him coffee without asking how he took it and gotten it exactly right. The way she had said, I'm not promising anything, standing in the doorway of that coffee shop, with her coat half on and her eyes saying something her words were carefully not. Marcus found him one Thursday evening in the empty boardroom on the 32nd floor of Romano Group headquarters, standing at the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out over New York. You look terrible, Marcus said. Thank you. How long are you going to stand at windows looking tragic? I'm not looking tragic. I'm thinking about. Caruso was quiet for a moment. Then, whether the person who gets to decide if something is over should always be the one who left. Marcus sat down. That's a real question. I know. What do you want to do? Caruso turned from the window. His expression was not desperate. It was not dramatic. It was the expression of a man who had made a quiet decision and was simply working out the logistics of executing it. Nothing, he said. I'm going to wait until she's ready. If she's ready. And if she's not, then I'll have built something worth being proud of anyway. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. She really did a number on you. She really did, Caruso agreed. And, somehow, he almost smiled. He had no idea that 4 days later, Delilah Osei would walk through the doors of the community center groundbreaking ceremony in the Bronx. Not because she had tracked him, but because the fellowship she had just accepted placed her as a policy advisor on urban investment projects in New York. He had no idea. But the universe apparently had opinions. She saw him before he saw her. He was crouched down, talking to a group of kids who couldn't have been older than 10, showing one of them something on a tablet. Architectural plans, she realized, for the new center, and the child was pointing at something on the screen with the serious expression of someone who had been consulted on matters of importance. Caruso was nodding like the child's input was exactly what he needed. Delilah stood at the edge of the crowd in her gray coat, the February cold pressing in from every side, and felt something unlock in her chest that she had been keeping very carefully closed for 6 months. He looked up, found her, the way his eyes found her, across the crowd, without searching, as if some part of him had always known the exact coordinates of wherever she was, made her breath go shallow. He stood slowly, crossed the distance between them in a way that was neither rushed nor restrained. Just direct. Present. Hi, she said, when he was close enough that the word was just for him. Hi, he said, and it was everything. They stepped to the side, away from the crowd, finding a quiet stretch near the building's new wall where the construction noise provided a strange privacy. You accepted the DC fellowship, he said. New York Extension, she corrected. Urban Investment Advisory. I started Monday. I know, he said. Marcus mentioned your name was on the project roster. I made him say it twice. Did you arrange it? No, he said immediately. And she believed him. She believed him because she had spent 6 months studying what she knew of him, and she had never once found a place where his word and his actions pointed different directions. Your father? She asked. Connecticut. Retired. Permanently. The Gray operations? Dissolved. Completely. The announcement went public in January. She had read it. She had read every word. The community fund? 22 million now, he said. We had better returns than projected in Q4. She looked at him. At this man who had walked into her life like a quiet disruption and refused to be loud about any of the ways he had changed himself since. Why didn't you call? She asked. You asked me to let you go, he said simply. I was going to let you go for as long as you needed. I would have waited. For how long? His eyes were very steady. However long it took for you to decide that what we were starting was worth finishing. Delilah felt the last of the wall come down. Not dramatically. Walls never come down dramatically when they matter. They just go quiet, and the space where they were feels suddenly open and possible. I'm scared, she said, because she was. And she was done pretending she wasn't. Of me. Of how fast I fell, she said. Of how sure I felt before it all collapsed. Of trusting that again. Then trust it slowly, he said. I'm not asking you for fast, Delilah. I'm asking you for real. She looked at the community center behind him, at the children still clustered around the architectural tablet, at the city stretching out in every direction around them, cold and loud and beautiful and entirely indifferent to the two of them standing here, deciding something that only they could decide. Then she looked at him. You walked past 50 women who were throwing themselves at you, she said. You looked through every single one of them. And then you followed a woman who didn't even know your name into a service corridor just to make sure she was all right. You steadied a tray one-handed, he said. I had to know who you were. That's the most absurd reason to fall for someone I've ever heard. Welcome to my life. She laughed, and he smiled. The real one, the unguarded one, the one she had seen in the photograph with the child and the hard hat and had been thinking about for 4 days. She took one step forward. He met her halfway. They stood there in the February cold, the city loud around them, and she put her hand against his chest, flat-palmed, feeling his heartbeat through the fabric of his coat. It was faster than she expected. Start over, she said. With everything true this time. Everything true, he agreed. Nothing hidden. Nothing hidden. He covered her hand with his. From the beginning, she asked. He shook his head. From right here, he said. We have everything we need. 1 year later, Delilah Osei stood on the rooftop of a brownstone in Brooklyn. The building Caruso had quietly renovated and gifted to a community housing trust, and where they now shared the top floor. Wearing a dress the color of champagne, her natural hair loose around her shoulders, holding a policy report in one hand and a glass of sparkling water in the other, watching the city go golden in the evening light. Her fellowship had turned into a full position. Her sister had visited last month and cried when she met Caruso, not because she was sad, but because she saw the way he looked at Delilah, like she was the most remarkable thing in the room, every room, always. Her mother had called afterward and said, in the careful way of Ghanaian mothers who felt things deeply and expressed them obliquely, that one has sense. Caruso appeared in the doorway behind her, jacket off, sleeves rolled, carrying 2 plates of jollof rice she had taught him to make and that he had been practicing, with admirable stubbornness, for 3 months. How is it this time, he asked. She took a bite, closed her eyes. Getting there, he repeated, with the tone of a man who intended to master this. She leaned back against him. His arms came around her from behind, warm and certain, the way they always did, without ceremony. "You never told me," she said. "What made you come into that service corridor?" "I told you. The tray. The real reason." He was quiet for a moment. The city hummed below them. "Because everyone else in that room was performing," he said. "And you were the only person just being, doing your job. Not pretending, not angling, just real." She turned in his arms to look at him. "And now," he said, "you are still the only real thing in every room you walk into." She kissed him. The city kept moving, indifferent and beautiful below. If you felt everything in this story, smash that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Which moment broke you open? The hallway? The coffee shop? Or the February afternoon when she finally came back? Because I want to know. And drop a comment. Should we follow Dee's story next, or dive into what happened when Caruso finally confronted his father face to face? You decide. Thank you for being here. And remember, the most powerful thing you can offer someone is the version of yourself that stopped performing. See you in the next one.